The sun had barely begun to rise, casting golden streaks across the towering glass facade of the Beaumont Imperial Hotel. Inside, the polished marble floor mirrored the glow, untouched and still, like a canvas waiting for movement. At the far end of the lobby, a quiet figure moved gracefully with a mop in hand. Her name was Elena Rivera. No one ever noticed Elena. To the guests, she was just the cleaning lady, another background blur in their high-speed lives. To the staff, she was efficient, quiet, and invisible. But Elena didn't mind. She had mastered the art of being unnoticed. It gave her space to observe, to think, to dream quietly. Her routine was precise, almost meditative. Floors at dawn, restrooms before breakfast, and windows before noon. She always wore her dark hair tied back, her uniform crisp, and her shoes soft enough not to echo on the tile. Elena had worked here for 7 years. In that time, she had seen more than most people ever would. She had witnessed the collapse of a bride moments before her wedding, the breakdown of a millionaire who had just lost everything, and the quiet kindness of a child who offered her a chocolate while no one was watching. She remembered all of it. She remembered everything. On this particular morning, something was different. The lobby, normally so empty and quiet at this hour, buzzed with tension. A woman paced frantically by the front desk, her words urgent and sharp, but no one seemed to understand her. Elena glanced up, her hands pausing on the mop. The woman was holding a little girl, 5, maybe 6 years old, who clutched her chest and wheezed, panic etched in her small face. "Please, can anyone help?" the woman cried in German, her accent thick and desperate. The receptionist looked helpless, frozen. The bellhop hovered nearby, unsure. Something pulled Elena forward before her mind could catch up. She stepped into the open, heart pounding. "Intrigue, can't helfen," she said softly. The woman's eyes snapped to hers. Relief washed over her face, and in a rush she began to explain. Elena listened carefully, nodding, then knelt beside the girl and spoke gently in German, asking her to breathe slowly, to focus on her voice. She called for someone to bring warm water and kept her own presence calm, soothing. The child's breathing began to settle. The room had fallen into stunned silence. Elena could feel the weight of the stairs, but she didn't look up. She stayed with the girl until her breathing evened out. Only then did she rise slowly, dusting off her knees. Among the onlookers, one pair of eyes was more intense than the darter. From the far end of the balcony overlooking the lobby stood Mr. Adrian Blackwell, the CEO of the Beaumont Hotel Group. Known for his reserved nature and sharp instincts, he rarely involved himself in the day-to-day operations. But now his gaze followed Elena with a mixture of surprise and something else, curiosity. He came down the stairs slowly, his expression unreadable. As he approached, the staff parted instinctively. He stopped just short of Elena. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "Elena Rivera," she replied, steady but unsure. "You speak German?" he asked, though he had already heard her. "Yes, and others." His brow furrowed slightly. "How many?" Elena hesitated. "9, she said quietly. A beat of silence followed. Then, "My office. Now." No anger, no smile. Just that quiet authority that didn't ask. It commanded. Elena's stomach tightened, but she nodded and followed him through the hushed corridor, her heart pounding in her chest. Behind them, whispers swirled like smoke through the lobby. The cleaning lady who spoke 9 languages? Who was she, really? The doors to the executive elevator closed behind them, sealing Elena into a future she hadn't seen coming, one she had quietly prepared for her entire life without even knowing it. The elevator ride felt impossibly long, though it lasted less than a minute. Elena stood beside Adrian Blackwell in tense silence. He didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed straight ahead, jaw clenched, thoughts clearly racing. Elena's hands, still faintly smelling of lemon-scented polish, gripped the edges of her uniform. She could feel her pulse in her throat. When the doors slid open, she stepped into a space unlike anything she'd ever seen. The top floor of the Beaumont Imperial wasn't just an office, it was a world of its own. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the waking city. Sleek furniture, marble accents, and framed accolades on the walls whispered power. This was where decisions worth millions were made, where voices weren't raised because authority didn't need to shout. Adrian gestured to a chair across from his desk. Elena sat carefully, suddenly aware of the scuffs on her shoes. He took his time, removing his jacket and folding it over the back of his chair before finally settling across from her. His eyes were sharper up close, still not unkind but definitely searching. "You speak 9 languages," he said, as if confirming it for himself. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice soft but unwavering. "Which ones?" "Spanish, English, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, Japanese, and Mandarin." A silence stretched between them. Outside the window, the city stirred to life. Cars moved, pedestrians hurried, business as usual. But in this room, time had paused. "Where did you learn them?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. Elena hesitated, then answered carefully. "My mother was a translator for an embassy. We moved a lot, consulates, international schools. I picked up languages naturally. After she passed, I stayed with relatives. Worked to support myself." Adrian folded his hands together, processing. "So why are you mopping floors?" The question wasn't cruel. It was genuine. "Because life isn't always fair," she said simply. "Because sometimes doors close before you can reach them. And sometimes you take whatever job you can find so you can pay rent and send money to people who depend on you." He studied her, the silence becoming heavier. Finally, he rose and walked to a shelf behind his desk. From it, he pulled a leather-bound folder and laid it on the desk in front of her. "This is a briefing for our international expansion," he said. "It's a project we've delayed because we lacked someone who could manage communications. Across multiple regions, it's complicated. Legalities, cultures, translation accuracy, tone, nuance. We've burned through consultants who cost more than small countries and still couldn't manage it. You might be able to." Elena blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "You want me to work on this? I want to see what you can do. This isn't a favor, Miss Rivera. This is an opportunity, one you've clearly earned. The question is, can you deliver?" Her chest rose and fell with quiet, measured breaths. Then she nodded. "Yes, I can." "Good," Adrian replied. "You'll be given a temporary position, project language liaison. If it works out, we'll talk about something permanent. HR will draft the paperwork. You'll be off the cleaning schedule starting tomorrow." Elena didn't smile. Not yet. She simply said, "Thank you." Adrian nodded once and looked down at the papers on his desk. "You can go. And Miss Rivera?" She paused at the door. "Don't make yourself invisible again, it doesn't suit you." The words lingered in her ears as she stepped back into the elevator. She descended from the top floor not just as a cleaning lady but as something else. Something, unspoken but rising. A hidden part of herself had been seen, acknowledged, and chosen. Down in the lobby, her cart still stood by the corner, mop leaning patiently where she had left it. She walked past it without touching it. That evening, she sat alone in her small apartment, the briefing folder open on her coffee table. Diagrams, contracts, correspondence. Nothing about it was easy, but nothing worth doing ever was. And as the city darkened outside her window, Elena read, translated, annotated, her mind alive in 9 different languages, and finally, for the first time in years, she felt like her voice mattered. 3 days into her new role, Elena was already working late. Not because anyone asked her to, but because she couldn't bear to do less than her best. The conference room on the 21st floor had become her temporary workspace. Its long glass table now covered in marked-up documents, translation notes, and her personal notebook, filled with details about cultural sensitivities, etiquette, and international negotiation techniques. She hadn't just taken the role seriously. She had owned it. The first assignment involved coordinating a presentation for an upcoming investor meeting with representatives from 5 countries. Each had different concerns, styles, and business expectations. Elena had rewritten entire sections of the pitch, in multiple languages to make the tone more respectful, persuasive, and locally resonant. She even corrected subtle translation errors that previous consultants had missed, errors that could have cost the company millions. But the real test came. That Thursday afternoon, Elena was called into a strategy meeting, not just with Adrian, but with the entire senior executive board. 12 individuals, each with polished resumes, expensive watches, and expressions that ranged from mildly curious to quietly skeptical. They'd all heard the story. The cleaning lady who spoke 9 languages and somehow landed herself in a strategic role. Whispers floated through hallways and email threads. Some assumed it was a publicity stunt. Others thought she might be related to someone important. No one quite believed it could be merit. Adrian, as usual, gave nothing away. He simply introduced her without embellishment. This is Elena Rivera. She'll walk you through the adjustments we're making to the global expansion pitch. Elena stood at the head of the table with her notes clutched tightly in her hands. She looked at the room, not with fear, but with presence. Then she spoke, first in English. Then, without pausing, she shifted into French to greet the European delegates joining via video. She seamlessly transitioned into Mandarin, offering specific acknowledgments about business customs in Beijing. A few board members exchanged looks. She wasn't just translating, she was communicating in a way that showed she understood more than just language. She understood people. Her voice was steady, confident, the rhythm of someone who had lived in multiple countries, who had listened more than she spoke, who had seen things fall apart and kept going anyway. By the end of the presentation, the room was silent. Adrian leaned forward. Any questions? One executive cleared his throat. Actually, yes, he said, glancing at Elena. Where did you come from? Elena smiled faintly. From the same place as many people, she said. Hard work, quiet dreams, and a little hope that someone would notice. There was a long pause. Then the CFO nodded slowly. Impressive, he murmured. When the meeting ended, a few board members lingered, offering polite, even respectful conversation. Elena held her ground, professional but kind, then gathered her materials and exited quietly. Back in the hallway, Adrian caught up to her. You handled them well, he said. I used to watch them from a distance, she said. I memorized their patterns, what mattered to them. I figured if I ever got a chance to stand in front of them, I'd be ready. He studied her again, the way he did that first morning. You always expected this moment, didn't you? No, she said, honestly. But I never stopped preparing for it. That night, back in her small apartment, Elena pulled a faded photo from a drawer. Her mother stood in it, smiling, one hand resting on a stack of books, the other gently touching Elena's shoulder when she was just a child. On the back, in Spanish, her mother had once written, "Your words are your wings. Use them to fly, above what tries to hold you down." Elena traced the words with her finger and smiled. She wasn't flying yet, but she had finally left the ground. The next challenge didn't come in the form of documents or boardrooms. It came quietly, dressed, in tailored suits and polite smiles. Elena had made waves, yes, but not everyone liked the ripple effect. Within days of her successful presentation, whispers turned sharper. Comments floated just out of earshot. An anonymous email reached HR questioning her credentials. Someone questioned whether a cleaning lady could truly handle diplomatic communications. Not everyone was rooting for her ascent. Elena noticed the shifts, how certain managers avoided eye contact, how a few colleagues who once exchanged polite greetings now looked away when she entered a room. But the worst came one morning when she walked into the conference room and found her notes missing. 3 days of careful annotations, translations, and comparative analysis. Gone. Only a yellow sticky note remained, stuck to the edge of the whiteboard. It read, "Stay in your lane." She stared at it for a long time. Her fingers brushed the sticky paper before she crumpled it and dropped it in the trash. No tears, no panic, just quiet resolve. That afternoon she went to Adrian. "I need a secure workspace," she said simply. "Somewhere I can focus. Somewhere." Locked. He looked up from his desk. Trouble? Nothing I can't handle. But if I'm going to do this right, I need to know my work is protected. He nodded. No questions. Within the hour, Elena had her own access-coded office. A small room with a window, a desk, and a cabinet for her growing files. She filled it with color-coded folders, language dictionaries, and a corkboard that soon became a mosaic of connections, translations, and regional strategies. But the whispers didn't stop. At a corporate dinner that week, she caught part of a conversation between two department heads. She's just a phase, one muttered over a glass of wine. Blackwell's little experiment. Give it a month. She'll burn out or mess up. Elena didn't interrupt. She simply took her seat, smiled through the evening, and left early. But that night, instead of going home, she walked the city for hours. Past the office towers, the subway entrances, and the late-night cafes she used to clean after closing hours. She thought about the countless times she had scrubbed floors while hearing conversations about stocks, mergers, and innovations from people who never once looked her in the eye. She had memorized those words like a second skin, not out of envy, but out of hunger to understand, to learn, to be more. Now she was here, not by luck, but by persistence. And no one was going to erase that. So she returned to work the next morning even earlier than usual, not to clean, but to prepare. She created multilingual glossaries for the entire executive team, anticipating the questions they'd have at the next presentation. She built a system that used culture-based phrasing templates so future campaigns could be adjusted faster with better accuracy. She even stayed late coaching a junior analyst struggling with a translation issue, despite knowing that same analyst had once laughed at her uniform. One afternoon, Adrian stopped by unannounced. He watched her quietly for a moment as she outlined key negotiation points on a whiteboard, speaking softly in Portuguese to a regional partner over speakerphone. When the call ended, he spoke. "You know, I underestimated you," he said. Elena turned, arching a brow. "That makes two of us." He smiled slightly. "You've done more in 3 weeks than most consultants have done in 3 years. I want you to attend the summit next month in Geneva. You'd be the only one who can handle the cross-lingual coordination at that level." Elena paused. Her heart swelled, but her voice stayed calm. "I'd be honored." As he left, she sat back and exhaled, staring out the window. For the first time in her life, she was not surviving. She was leading. She knew the road ahead wasn't smooth. Doubts would linger. Challenges would keep arriving. But she also knew something else. This was her moment. And it was only just beginning. The summit in Geneva felt like the final exam of everything Elena had prepared for her entire life. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment she stepped into that grand hall. Delegates from over 20 countries milled around, each speaking in rapid-fire exchanges, switching languages mid-sentence, discussing deals worth millions. The air buzzed with urgency and tension clung like perfume. Elena walked through it all with quiet composure. Her black suit was modest but sharp. No name tag, no assistant trailing behind. She was there not as decoration or token, but as a key strategist. Her first assignment came swiftly. A conflict had broken out between two major partners over a cultural misunderstanding and a proposal. The European rep had misphrased a phrase in Mandarin, inadvertently insulting a senior official from Beijing. The mood in the room had shifted, from curious to combative. Elena stepped in, not with apologies but with clarity. She addressed both sides in their native tongues, gently reframing the statement, restoring dignity to both parties. Her tone was calm, her words chosen with surgical precision. When she was done, the tension had evaporated. Conversations resumed. A deal was saved. Word spread fast. Soon, she wasn't just part of the American delegation. She was being pulled into breakout rooms, asked to mediate, to interpret, to clarify. She did it all without notes, her brain operating like a symphony of memory, nuance, and intuition. But amidst the professional whirlwind, something unexpected happened. One evening, after a long session, Adrian joined her on a balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. The stars shimmered on the water and the city glowed behind them. "You've changed the way this company functions," he said quietly, resting his hands on the stone railing. "Not just what we do, how we think." She looked at him surprised. "All I've done is translate." "No," he said. "You've made us listen." Elena didn't know what to say. Compliments still felt foreign, like a language she hadn't mastered yet. Adrian continued. "You ever think about your future here long term?" She hesitated. "Sometimes. But I've never seen a path like this before. There wasn't a map for someone like me. Maybe it's time you draw one," he said, his voice softer now. "You've earned more than a title or a desk. You've earned leadership." Elena turned away, staring at the lake. She had spent years thinking about survival, paying bills, sending money home, being overlooked, underestimated. But in this moment, for the first time, she thought about building something permanent. About leading not because someone gave her permission, but because she had the strength to carry others with her. The next morning, she was asked to open the second day of the summit with a keynote on cross-cultural communication. Standing behind the podium, facing a room filled with suits and skeptics, she felt no fear. She began with a story about a woman no one saw. A woman who once scrubbed lobby floors while memorizing the words of those who passed by. A woman who spoke 9 languages, not to impress, but to connect. She didn't mention her name, but by the time she finished, the room gave her a standing ovation. Backstage, a young translator approached her with wide eyes. "You made me believe there's a place for people like us," she whispered. Elena smiled, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "There always was. We just have to stop waiting for the invitation." And with that, she walked back into the summit, head held high, not just as a translator or a strategist, but as someone quietly rewriting the rules of what it meant to belong. The days after the summit felt surreal. Elena returned to the Beaumont Imperial with a new title, a new role, and a renewed sense of purpose. But the real journey had only just begun. She wasn't just a language expert or a temporary project lead anymore. She was now a symbol of what perseverance, courage, and quiet strength could accomplish. Her office became a hub of transformation. Junior employees, many of whom had never imagined they could break through corporate glass ceilings, sought her out for advice and mentorship. She encouraged them to embrace their unique stories, reminding them that their backgrounds were not barriers but bridges. But leadership came with its own challenges. Not everyone was ready to accept change. Old hierarchies resisted her presence. Some executives who once scoffed now found themselves forced to collaborate, their pride bruised but their respect growing. Elena learned diplomacy beyond language, how to navigate egos, manage expectations, and inspire trust in those who doubted her. One afternoon, Adrian called her into his office. He slid a thick folder across the desk. "This is a proposal for the Beaumont Foundation," he said. "A new initiative to support education and professional development for underrepresented communities worldwide. We want you to lead it." Elena looked through the pages. Plans for scholarships, mentorship programs, language training, and career placement. It was ambitious, but exactly the kind of opportunity she had dreamed of. She felt a weight settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was a mission. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I won't let you down." Adrian smiled, but there was seriousness behind it. "I know you won't." Months passed. The foundation launched with resounding success. Elena traveled to schools in remote villages, met with young people hungry for chance and guidance, and witnessed firsthand how education and opportunity could change lives. One evening, after a long day in a rural town, she received a message from an old friend, the junior analyst who once laughed at her uniform. The I message was simple but powerful. "Thank you for showing me what's possible." Elena stared at the words, the memory flooding back of who she had been and who she had become. She realized then that her story wasn't just about languages or business deals. It was about hope. The hope that no matter where you start, with courage and determination, you could change not only your life but the lives of those around you. Years later, standing on a stage at an international conference, Elena shared her journey. From unseen hotel maid to leader, mentor, and changemaker. Her voice was steady, filled with conviction. Every one of us has a story, she told the audience. A story that matters. Don't wait for someone else to recognize it. Believe in your own strength. Because sometimes the person you need to surprise the world is you. The applause echoed around the room. Elena smiled, knowing that her journey was far from over, and that the true impact of her story was only just beginning to ripple outward.